It is 1943, and across Europe our back gardens are humming with purpose. Dig for Victory campaigns are feeding families during the war years in Britain and beyond. Cold frames are stretching the growing season in practical and effective ways. Grape arbors are shading patios in refreshing green, while bean poles become little forts for the children. But somewhere between tidy lawns and supermarket aisles, we have forgotten these traditions. Entire ways of doing things have vanished over the decades. The tools, the layouts, and even some of the plants themselves have disappeared from common use. Today, we are unearthing 15 brilliant garden features that once defined back gardens and allotments and might be worth reviving for sustainable urban gardening. Long before fancy greenhouses became status symbols, European gardeners had a humbler trick up their sleeves. Cold frames are tucked against the sunniest wall of the house and look quite unassuming. Built from salvaged wood and repurposed windows, sometimes even old materials from around the home, they create a cozy microclimate. No electricity or machinery is needed, just sunlight, thermal mass, and clever design. Positioned to pace the low-angled winter sun, they soak up woomers by day. They hold it overnight in the soil behind to protect your plants. Inside cold frames, can't life from seas while snow still blankets the ground. Lettuces, spinach, and radishes thrive in these simple setups where other crops would struggle. In many homes, they stretch the growing season from February all the way into December. They keep fresh greens on the table through frost and chill without much effort. They are not flashy, but they work quietly and reliably. They extend the harvest with nothing but glass, dirt, and sun in our urban spaces. In an age before shops stocked everything year-round, that made a real difference to families. It is not only easy to create a productive garden, but it is a great way to have fun. It provides plenty of healthful exercise for everyone involved in the process. Before swing sets and plastic slides took over the back garden, there was something far more practical. Bean teepees are not just garden structures, but living play areas that grow taller every day. Building one is simple, with 6 to 8 long poles tied together at the top like a teepee frame. At the base, kids help plant runner beans, then watch in awe as the vines climb skyward. Their heart-shaped leaves form walls, ceilings, and cool midsummer shade for the children. By July, the structure becomes a secret world, buzzing with bees and dappled sunlight. Children crawl inside to read books, snack on tender beans, or simply play for a while. When autumn comes, the teepee gracefully returns to the earth with no fuss. No plastic needs to be stored, and no big cleanup is needed at all. For many families, it is both a playground and a pantry in the back garden. It is a place where fun grows alongside supper in a natural way. From whimsical bean structures to a full-scale national movement, the next feature comes next. When Europe faced wartime challenges, millions of citizens turned back gardens, rooftops, and vacant lots into productive plots. Victory gardens, or Dig for Victory campaigns, are not just patches of vegetables. They are statements rooted in grit, hope, and self-reliance for the community. By 1944, nearly 20 million people across Britain are growing food at home. Together, they produce a large share of the fresh vegetables needed in those times. In cities, apartment dwellers build rooftop planters on any available space. At factories, employees tend lunchtime garden plots where they can. Even schoolyards are transformed into potato beds and cabbage rows for the children. These gardens are essential, as ration books only stretch so far. Shop shelves often sit empty during those difficult periods. Families learn to can, pickle, and preserve the produce they grow. Kids help hold compost, and neighbors swap sheaves and recipes with each other. It is not just gardening, but survival wrapped in community spirit. Fresh food is packed with the minerals and vitamins we all need. It keeps everyone healthy, strong, and fit during challenging times. While victory gardens eventually fade, one plant quietly holds its ground. Rhubarb is the rugged perennial that modern gardening seems to have forgotten. It does not bloom with showy colors or grow with trendy fanfare at all. For generations, rhubarb means resilience, reliability, and reward for the gardener. You would not find it front and center in the plot. Rhubarb patches are placed in the margins, behind sheds along fence lines. They are in half-shaded corners where little else thrives in the soil. Once planted, rhubarb just stays there year after year without much care. It shrugs off droughts, ignores neglect, and comes back every spring. Its stalks burst from the soil like thick red and green spears. Kids are sent out with knives or scissors and return hauling bundles. The bundles are for grandmother's pies, crumbles, and other recipes. Tart, tangy, and unforgettable, rhubarb is more than a plant. It is a tradition that families pass down through the generations. Families pass down not just the patches, but the recipes for jams, pies, syrups, and sauces. Each one is a little sour, a little sweet, and deeply nostalgic for everyone. Before fertilizers come in shiny bags with promises of perfection, gardeners rely on companion planting. It is not science as we know it today, but it is brilliant in practice. A garden is not just a collection of plants, but a carefully choreographed community. The most famous example is the Three Sisters planting method that works well. Corn shoots up tall and strong, offering a living ladder for the beans. Those beans fix nitrogen into the soil, feeding the corn as they climb. Squash sprawls out below, with broad leaves shading out weeds effectively. It locks in moisture without any tools or additives needed. Companion planting goes far beyond these three sisters in the plot. Marigolds are tucked near tomatoes to confuse pests with their pungent aroma. Basil is not just culinary, but a deterrent for certain insects in the bed. Nasturtiums play decoy, luring aphids to their showy blooms instead. This hands-in-the-dirt wisdom is passed down, tested, and remembered over time. Today, we can use it in our urban gardens to reduce the need for chemicals. It creates more balanced ecosystems in small allotments and balconies. Before the hum of refrigerators, food storage relies on one of humanity's most efficient inventions. Root cellars are built into hillsides or buried beneath backyard gardens. These quiet chambers preserve the harvest with stone soil and natural rhythms. Inside, the air hovers between cool temperatures with humidity near 90%. This makes them perfect for storing potatoes, beets, carrots, and cabbage for months. Families pack vegetables into crates or sand-filled bins with care. They treat them like living supplies, not shelf-stable goods from the shop. Each crop has its quirks for proper storage in the cellar. Apples need airflow to avoid ethylene buildup in their section. Onions like it dry, while root vegetables thrive in damp corners. Pickles and sauerkraut rest in heavy crocks that line the floor. Some of the most advanced cellars are partitioned into different zones. Humid zones are for roots, and dry ones for garlic. Ventilated areas are for ripening fruits. In the space, no plug or noise is needed for these cellars at all. Just physics and smart construction do the work of modern refrigeration. Open day to touch up even better than some appliance in the home. Lighting from practical food storage to living architecture, grape arbors grace many back gardens. They are the perfect blend of function and beauty in the space. Structures that offer shade, privacy, fresh fruit, and seasonal drama all in one. These wooden frameworks often stretch between the house and the garden. They form green corridors that filter sunlight and invite slow walks. By late summer, mature vines envelop every beam in the structure. They transform basic carpentry into a lush, fruit-laden pavilion. Families plant more than just table grapes in the arbor. Concords are turned into jelly and juice for the family table. Wine grapes are fermented into homemade batches for special occasions. Whatever is left becomes raisins drying on screens in the sun. It is a long game, as vines need 3 to 5 years to establish. Once they do, they bear fruit for generations, sometimes more than a century. Planting one is not just about shade or grapes, but a legacy. While grape arbors reward patience, asparagus takes it a step further in the garden. This is not just a gardening, but a long-term investment in future abundance. Plant it once, wait years, and reap the rewards for decades ahead. The old saying is clear about planting asparagus for your children. Year 1 shows nothing, and year 2, maybe a few spears. By year 3, the real magic begins. With tender stalks, they rise like clockwork each spring for a harvest lasting 6 to 8 weeks. They keep coming for up to 30 years or more in the bed. Gardeners treat asparagus beds like sacred ground in the plot. They clear the sunniest corner and work in manure by the wheelbarrow. They space the crowns with care and attention to detail. Once planted, you do not disturb them, as they are living heirlooms. Some patches become family landmarks, still producing from generations earlier. The oldest documented beds in Europe date back many years. They are still sprouting every spring, without fail, in the soil. Buried beneath the soils of ancient gardens lies a secret modern irrigation has not improved on. Known as ollas, from the Spanish word for pot, these unglazed clay vessels slowly release moisture right where plants need it most. No tubes, timers, or tech are needed. Just physics and genius pottery doing the job beautifully. At first glance, it feels too simple to be real, yet it delivers wonderful results for sustainable gardening. A porous clay pot buried beside your crops and filled with water just once every few days works perfectly in our back gardens. This was not a recent invention, as it is ancient technology that gardeners have used for centuries across Europe. Archaeologists have uncovered similar pots dating back thousands of years in Mediterranean regions and beyond. European gardeners perfected the method, growing crops in challenging conditions with minimal water use. The genius lies in its simplicity, as the olla self-regulates based on the moisture demand from the plants. No run-up, no evaporation occurs, just slow silent efficiency that can cut water use by up to 70%. It is not just sustainable, but smart in our water-conscious European allotments and balconies. Somehow we left this ancient method buried in history, but we can bring it back now with ease. Not all plant protection came in rows or fences. Some arrived as individual glistening domes placed delicately over young sprouts. Cloches, bell-shaped covers of glass, ceramic, or later plastic, offered seedlings their own private greenhouse. Walking through a garden filled with cloches felt like stepping into a field of crystal bells in the morning light. Each one acted as a miniature greenhouse, trapping heat, blocking wind, and shielding young plants from frost and early-season pests. The original French cloches were hand-blown masterpieces, thick-walled glass bells that stored solar warmth by day. European gardeners were resourceful, using mason jars, cut milk jugs, or old lamp covers pressed into service. Form did not matter, but function did in those practical days of growing. With these tiny domes, lettuce defied snowstorms, and tomato seedlings went into the ground weeks early. Herbs overwintered where they had no business surviving in the cooler climate. It was season extension at the scale of a single riff, and it worked remarkably well. In the quiet corners of old gardens, behind the sheds and beneath buzzing flies, something alchemical brewed. Gardeners stirred buckets of rotting comfrey, nettles, or fish scraps into murky, bubbling mixtures. Compost teas so potent they fed entire plots, and so pungent they cleared the yard in seconds. The process was deceptively simple, with nettles, comfrey, or any nitrogen-rich material submerged in water. They were left to stew for weeks, and anaerobic fermentation did the rest, naturally. What came out was a swampy brew strong enough to clear a garden party, yet plants drank it up like tonic. This was not just homemade fertilizer, but something alive rich in fast-acting nutrients and beneficial microbes. Compost tea worked both about and below the soil line, feeding roots while improving soil biology in a single dose. Recipes varied by need, as comfrey boosted blooms and nettle fired up leafy greens. Fish tea packed a protein punch that made vegetables explode with growth in the beds. It was not pretty, but it worked, and gardeners swore by it season after season. When the harvest was in, rural kitchens did not just store onions, they displayed them with pride. Braiding was not merely practical, but a cherished tradition in many homes. Dried stalks twisted into elegant ropes hung from pantry beams, turning humble vegetables into rustic chandeliers. The technique was as practical as it was beautiful, for everyday use. Gardeners would begin with the rast permersed brooms weaving dried tops into tight, rhythmic patterns. Layer by layer, the braid crows part craftsmanship and part choreography in the process. The best braids could stretch several feet, holding dozens of onions without snapping or bruising a single one. These braids were not just for show, as the airflow between bulbs helped prevent rot effectively. Any softening onion stood out instantly and could be plucked before it spoiled the rest. In a time before plastic bins and mesh bags, braiding was preservation by design. The visual impact was a bonus, with amber storage onions intertwined with purples and reds. They hung like rustic garlands above kitchen tables, whispering a simple truth. Someone here knew how to grow and how to keep the harvest properly. Before grocery store berries were bred for shelf life, backyard strawberries grew like wild dreams. Heritage varieties exploded with flavor and spread with abandon, sending out runners. They turned tidy garden beds into sprawling carpets of red dotted green within a single summer. These were not the giant watery fruits stacked in supermarket clamshells at all. Heritage strawberries were smaller, softer, and wildly flavorful, with each bite tasting like summer condensed. The plants repaid care with generosity, as every runner that touched soil became a daughter plant. With a little patience, a modest row could turn into a sprawling patch that fed families year after year. For kids, the patch was a living treasure hunt, with ripe berries hiding under leaves. Trails of runners led to new discoveries, and the thrill of eating sun-warmed fruit straight from the vine. It was not just gardening, but memory-making in the back garden. Strawberries may have sweetened the summer, but it was herbs that carried its essence into winter. In traditional European kitchens, bundles of sage, oregano, and thyme once hung like fragrant trophies. They turned rafters and root cellars into living spice cabinets full of aroma. This was not just rustic decor, but a vital preservation method, with roots stretching back centuries. Hubedreidingen, part science and part ritual in the homestays. Harvest at the right time, just before plowing, after the morning dow and before midday hit. Tie in small bandles hang upside down in cool, dark space, and wait patiently. The result was intensified plever with natural oils preserved 4 months later. Each plant required neoncs as basil dem and speed and rosemary preferred patience. Some households even constructed attic racks dedicated entirely to drying their own aromatic archives. To close out our list, we are not ending with a tool or a structure, but with something more essential. The generosity that once defined European gardening and allotments was shared freely. Backyard abundance was not hoarded, but passed around the neighborhood with kindness. Come August, every gardener faced the legendary courgette surplus in the plots. Instead of letting vegetables rot on the vine, families would pack baskets and walk the streets. They left produce on porches with handwritten notes, and no transaction was needed. These quiet rituals created unspoken economies of trust among neighbors. Tomatoes were swapped for sweet corn, and a jar of home-canned peaches came with a recipe. It often included a tip about soil, pH, for better growing next season. Older gardeners taught younger ones how to save seeds or combat squash bugs. Often, it was in exchange for a bit of help turning the compost heap. The exchange was not just food, but knowledge, history, and continuity for everyone involved. Seeds passed from hand to hand carried decades of adaptation to local soil conditions. In many cases, they were the only reason heirloom varieties survived into the 21st century. These lost garden features are not just quaint relics from the past. They are reminders of a time when back gardens were full of purpose, patience, and pride. They showed us that the best gardens did not just feed people, but grounded them in seasons. Today, in the age of apps and instant everything, maybe what we are really craving is that slower way. A garden that nourishes more than just the body in our urban spaces. Which of these forgotten traditions sparks something for you in your own plot? Have you seen any of them in old homes or heard stories from gardeners you still remember? Drop us a comment below, as we would love to know your thoughts on this. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Europe's gardening roots, hit that subscribe button. Share Stella Eureka with someone who would appreciate it too in their sustainable journey. This is Stella Eureka, signing off for now with green fingers and good wishes.